The sun as a whole, and it's gigantic. The size comparisons I'm going to show you in this video will blow your mind, I promise. And we'll find out what spectacular effects this will have on the Earth. So be sure to stay tuned until the end, and if you like it, I'll be galactically happy about a thumbs up and a comment, because that's how we get the algorithm to show this exciting topic to even more people. Thank you guys and welcome. Every morning when I wake up, I have a huge hole in my stomach. That's pretty much how the sun feels right now, except that this solar hole can't be filled with muffins, unlike in my case. The sun is a huge ball of hot ionized gas called plasma. Inside it, hydrogen atoms fuse to form helium, generating immensely high temperatures and pressure. This process of nuclear fusion not only generates the energy that the sun emits, but also an extremely complex magnetic field. And this magnetic field is the key to the so-called coronal holes. It is created by the dynamo-like effect inside them, which is driven by the convection of hot plasma. However, the magnetic field of the sun is not stable, but superdynamic. It is subject to constant changes and rearrangements, as you can see here in this animation. In some regions of the sun, the magnetic field becomes so strong that it encloses the surrounding plasma and binds it to the surface of the sun in a dense loop. Sunspots form at the end points of these loops, which can be seen in visible light as dark, cooler areas on the surface. Sunspots are therefore logically associated with intense magnetic activity. The more active the sun, the more sunspots. And you can sometimes even see them from Earth, but important note at this point. Never look at the sun unprotected, dear children. But only with a solar telescope that protects your eyes from the radiation, then you can enjoy such beautiful sights as you can see here. So now we know what a sunspot is. That leaves the question of what a coronal hole is, and spoiler, it's not the hole in the treasury that was created because the government once again completely miscalculated its spending.
In terms of money, we have no money.
Coronal holes form in areas where the sun's magnetic field is not as strong and opens up. These areas are called holes even though they are not really empty, but are much less densely filled with solar plasma than the regions surrounding them. And the lack of strong magnetic fields allows the hottest and most energetic part of the sun's atmosphere, called the corona, to escape and go off into space as solar wind. The corona is still very mysterious, because the corona is usually hotter than the surface of the sun itself, even though it is further away. Nobody really knows why, which is why astronomers refer to it as the corona paradox or corona problem. I'll refrain from making any more jokes about corona policy at this point. In any case, it is important to note that this opening of the magnetic field in coronal holes allows the energy-rich solar wind to escape into space, and this also affects the Earth, as we will see in a moment. The size and position of these holes can change over time, as the sun's magnetic field is in constant motion. Sometimes these coronal holes occur near the poles, while at other times they can be seen near the equator. And this is probably related to the 11-year solar cycle, known as the solar cycle. We are just approaching the solar maximum, which means that the sun is just going really steeply, and from 2025 at the latest this activity will gradually decrease. This means that there is currently an increase in sunspots, prominences, mass ejections, and all the beautiful things that the sun does throughout the day. In the course of this phase of activity, a gigantic, unimaginable coronal hole has formed on the sun in the last few days. Which is strange, though. Because coronal holes actually occur during solar minimum, scientists are quite surprised. This hole formed near the equator of the sun and reached a maximum width of, brace yourselves, 800,000 kilometers within 24 hours. That's more than 60 times the diameter of our Earth. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? So here it is again in a more common unit of measurement. That corresponds to 180 times the diameter of the USA. Now we just have to work out how many football fields that would correspond to. If any of you are good at math, feel free to post the answer in the comments. I'm curious. Okay, so we have a massive coronal hole pointing at the Earth. You might ask yourself,
are we all going to die now?
Yes, but not today, and not because of this. As we already know, coronal holes are known to amplify and accelerate the solar wind. The solar wind consists of charged particles that are propelled into space by the sun, and when they hit the Earth, they interact with the magnetic field of our planet. One of the most famous effects of this interaction is the beautiful northern lights or Aurora Borealis in the north and Aurora Australis in the south. When the solar wind reaches the Earth, it interacts with our planet's magnetic field and leads to the excitation of gases in the atmosphere, which then leads to the colorful light phenomena. I was in Tromsø in Norway last week and was very lucky with the auroras. Here you can see some of the pictures I took. It was really an incredible experience, and I recommend you take a trip to the far north sometime to marvel at this celestial spectacle. It really is one of the most beautiful things I have ever seen. There is also delicious reindeer stew, which is another good reason for the trip. Theoretically, increased solar wind can also cause problems for terrestrial technology, especially for satellites or space stations. Initially, the researchers also thought that this solar hole would lead to such interference, but surprisingly the effects were relatively moderate. However, the time window for the solar maximum has now been adjusted again, and scientists now expect it to occur at the beginning of 2024, i.e. very, very soon. What remains for now is a beautiful sight. I don't know about you, but this image almost leaves me in awe when I think about how gigantic the scale is here. Because this hole is not only bigger than the entire Earth, it even far exceeds the diameter of Jupiter. Absolutely crazy. And it also shows that we still barely understand the processes on the Sun and that we are ultimately at its mercy, because at some point there will be a massive solar storm that will fry our technology. It's not a question of if, but when. I will of course keep you up to date if YouTube is still working. But that's only possible if you follow my channel. I would be galactically happy if you would all subscribe now. I know from the YouTube statistics that a lot of people watch, but don't follow the channel. It's absolutely free. It helps me immensely, and you'll never miss a galactic video again, so everyone subscribe. As powerful as our sun is, it's tiny compared to other stars. One of these giant stars is Betelgeuse, and researchers suspect that it is on the verge of going supernova. If that happens, we would have an absolutely spectacular view from Earth. And this week something really crazy happened with Betelgeuse, something that is probably unprecedented in our lifetime. All about it in spectacular original footage can be found in the video below. Be sure to check it out. And if you are still looking for galactic Christmas presents and would like to support my work, then take a look at my space store. For example, there's delicious black hole coffee and fluffy plush planets. Every purchase helps me to continue the channel. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Take care, guys.